for us, Figma is not our competition right now. It's more like what we aspire a little bit to be, in the sense of the feature, the functionality. We try to be inspired, but we try to do the things our way. And our way, it's always going to be open source and an open model. So a lot of people start talking about Penpot the moment they hear about the acquisition. And the first thing they thought, well, you are just a Figma clone. But we try to explain we are not that. We are an open source alternative. Hi, I'm Alonso, and this is Open Source Made Simple.
Alonso, what is Penpot?
Okay, so Penpot we think is the first open source design platform that tries to integrate teams of people to develop. So we don't think it's just platform only design centric, but we want to create a platform that can that everyone can participate in, from developers to designers to UX engineers, whatever. They can create a tool to well, they can create uh, their application together in the platform. So that's one of our main concerns, to integrate the whole team in the platform.
Figma is now acquired by Adobe. So, what impact it has on Penpot?
Yeah, well, it's a huge deal for us because I think it validates some of the things we have been talking about since we tried to start an open source application. You have to take into account that Figma is a private enterprise, as we are really, but the difference is that our product is open source. So even if we try to, if a corporation tries to acquire our company, the code is always being there. It's always, it's going to be always open source. That's the main difference, I think. Um, and well, we haven't, we are not. I mean, for us, Figma is not our competition right now. It's more like what we aspire a little bit to be, in the sense of the feature, the functionality. We try to be inspired, but we try to do the things our way. And our way, it's always going to be open source and an open model. So we try to not only to incorporate things like such as the functionalities that Figma is developing, but we listen to the community and try to incorporate their needs, not only the things that they are doing. No, the thing is that a lot of things we do. They are very similar to the ones that Figma does, because they are almost a standard, a design standard. So Figma is huge, and they are putting a standard that, and that's one of the things we try to do. But as I was saying, the community is more important for us than anything else.
True. So, like you said, that Figma has more features, and with now Figma being acquired, what do you feel that to accommodate more of those features, like Figma? So, I feel that there is a chance for folks making more contributions to Penpot.
Yeah, sure. We have since the news arrived, we have a lot of new contributions, suggestion and issues open. So our community, I mean, we had a stable community, but suddenly it was a huge influx of new people, and that's very big for us. One of the things that we enjoyed the most is that um, a lot of people start talking about Penpot the moment they hear about the acquisition. Like, okay, so if you don't like that Figma is part of Adobe, maybe you should try to support Penpot, and that's it's huge for us. We um, I mean, all the contributions and all the support It's amazing for us.
What do you think it will mean for Penpot in the longer run?
I mean, before this acquisition, we had to explain a lot of things, you know. So when somebody asked about Penpot, we try to explain, and the first thing they thought, well, you are just a Figma clone, but we try to explain we are not that. We are an open source alternative. That's a very good difference. This acquisition maybe opened a lot of eyes of that, because suddenly they see the value of being open source, being open and being open source. After a huge a company as big as Adobe acquires your, so to speak, your inspiration, uh, suddenly you see the value that an open alternative provides, because you can you can just set an open source project. You can do a lot of things, but the code will be always open source. Even, I mean, you can maybe close the current version, but you can always fork an older branch and continue the project by the community if you want. Don't say that we will do, but I mean, you have that like that safety net always, you know. So
Yep,
that's
yep,
the
yep.
main thing, that it has opened a lot of eyes, I think. Uh, for, so for us, it's a great news.
You mentioned something interesting, that Penpot is not a Figma clone, it's an open source alternative. So,
Mhm.
do you think that with now the example of Figma being acquired, all these like Twilio and all these open source alternatives, there are chances of more companies, more orgs making open source alternatives to these big tools, big developer tools?
Mhm. Yeah, sure. We have seen that a lot of times. I mean, I think it's quite normal for the ecosystem to have that huge. I mean, that big application that are widely used are have their open source alternative. I've seen, for example, I can think of Godot for video game engine, or Blender for 3D modeling. Well, I can tell you almost a lot. Inkscape, GitLab, Mattermost as an alternative for Slack. In fact, we are very close friends with people at Mattermost, and they are a huge inspiration for us.
You mentioned that earlier you were doing Penpot in your free time,
Hmm.
but 2 years ago you took it more seriously.
Yeah.
So, what commitment goes into building an open source project from the team behind it?
I mean, the good thing about being full time on the open source is that you can really invest a lot of time basically, because is the principal thing. You can put the hours, because otherwise in your free time, maybe after the long day doing other things, you don't have the brain to create more, no, on your free time. And also, mm, you can get more quality time, because in your free time maybe you spend 1 hour, 2 hours, maybe more in the weekends. But once you pass to a model that you are full time, you can maybe solve several issues in one day, which is awesome, no? So that's the main reason we thought that this challenge needed a team with full time. We could we think we can make a, yeah, a, a company, well, a sustainable company with this model.
What do you think are the challenges of building a sustainable company in open source?
Oof. There are a lot of challenges. Well, I think the first one you could think of is the money, basically, because well, we need to pay our expenses and stuff. So yeah, the money I think is the main concern. Uh, right now, we don't have yet decided on a specific model for Penpot of monetization. In Taiga, we have um, software as a service. So it's fully open source. You can download and install your application on premises, but then on the software as a service, we charge a fee. But we don't think Pempo is going to be that model. We have to decide. Uh, for example, we have seen other companies do an open core business where they most of the functionality it's open source, and then they charge for maybe enterprise level functionality, like I don't know, maybe logging with LDAP, this kind of stuff that we already have in Penpot. But yeah, just to so you can make an idea. But it's something we haven't decided yet. Fortunately, uh, we have some money from investors, and that gives us the the peace of mind that we have time to develop a mature product before we are thinking in pricing. But really, our commitment is to always be fully open source. So that's a very heavy concern of us. And well, we have already the experience with Taiga that we can make it. So yeah.
Also, do you think that monetizing an open source project is a challenge in itself? Because people feel that open source means free.
Yeah.
So, enabling some features which are paid, that somehow gets tough, right?
Yeah, and I think it's a very big issue with the open source ecosystem because it's not sustainable to have basically people doing things for free. It's not healthy, neither for the people, the developers, neither for the companies, because the companies want to, the companies usually get a lot of value of open source. So they need to put the money in open source to have a return. Otherwise, well, we have seen a lot of times that uh, projects, open source projects, get abandoned and nobody develops them.
Mm.
Maybe the community as a whole embrace them, or maybe they die. um, you know, it's depends a lot of the people that wants to push for the product. So I don't think that's the healthy approach. I mean, it's if you can create a sustainable project, it's better for everyone.
Now let's talk about contributing to Penpot, right? So let's say I find a bug. What do I do?
Sure. Well, right now, the easiest path is to go to our GitHub page and add an issue, create an issue that we have a lot of them. Yeah, you try to be as specific as possible, please. So you specify your all the context, your operating system, your browser, um, what's happening and what should happen. So those are the two big questions. What is currently going on and what you think is the correct behavior? And from there, we usually process every day the issues. Yeah, we usually put them in our public backtracking system. It's that's so people we have like an open backtracking that is the on GitHub, and then another different one that it's well, it's also open because you can see them but you can't write on them, so that's for us. And there we usually match the whole project. We manage the whole project. We manage the issues and the features, and we try to prioritize them. So sometimes depends on the the severity of the issue, we will handle it sooner or later.
Let's say my issue gets approved. So how do I go about contributing a fix for that bug?
Yeah, sure. The best way is to tell us first. You are going to you want to try to solve this issue by yourself, and maybe we can tell you some tips. The communication, it's all in the open through GitHub comments. Yeah, we talk about it and where we think you could make the change. But I think the first thing is, before going deep into the code, ask us first, what do you think is the so we can maybe point to you to the best place to start looking.
So Alonso, like, what is the ideal way to get familiar with the code of Penpot? If I am visiting the repository for the first time, how am I supposed to get familiar with the code of Penpot?
Sure. Well, it's something that we really have to improve. But right now, for there is a video we record of me, of me precisely talking about the internal functionality and how to start developing inside the framework that we have created in Penpot. And there we have another recording of another colleague of mine, Eva, that goes more deep into how to create a new functionality with Penpot. So with those two videos, I think you have a lot of your bases covered, but it's something we have a lot of room for improvement, and something we will try to improve in this year to come. We want to improve the technical documentation, but it's something, we have been more focused in growing the platform, and but we need to stop and maybe open no improve the documentation for more people to contribute to the code. But right now I think the best two places are those two videos that maybe I can send them to you, and you can maybe put a link in the notes.
Sure, sure, sure. It's always a good toss up, tough toss up rather, between improving more features and improving the documentation for an open source
Yeah, sure.
project.
Sure, we
All
have
right.
documentation, but not more user centric documentation, how to use, how to install, this kind of stuff, but not so much about how to create a new functionality. No, well, we have documentation, but it's more internal that we need to free it and put it out there.
Got it, got it. So, like, if I'm working on an issue, contributing a fix for an issue, it's natural that I will get stuck somewhere. I will face issues. So,
Yeah.
what is the best mode of communication to resolve that issue?
Well, apart from GitHub, we also have a community that we want to push. I mean, it's main our other main communication method. Apart from GitHub, is the community. It's kind of a forum, like it's a discourse platform, and there you can start a new conversation, maybe suggest a change, maybe talk about the code. Maybe it's something that we are really pushing because we think it's the best way to have a conversation. We did have a guitar before, but really in the day to day it's kind of hard to keep track of a chat that is all the time, with messages and stuff. So this kind of asynchronous communication is better for us because we can check it from time to time, and answer all answer every message in the same time, for time management, and we think is better this way to have a lot of tools. But yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So, if I want to contribute a new feature, can I do that?
Yeah, sure, of course. We have to talk beforehand, basically, because one of our main concerns is the design of the platform is coherent. It's one of the our main concerns because other tools in open source, they tend to grow very organically, and the interface as well. So it's quite confusing. Uh, we hope to have we are talking all the time about developer contributions, but we think it's as important as developer contributions are design contributions, and it's something we want to as well to open to facilitate it, because we think it's hugely important. So if the feature that you request requires, for example, a new button or a new interface in the application, we need to talk about it first, because uh, it's not well, how to say it, we don't want everyone to decide where things go. Do you understand? I mean, the first thing that goes through a designer's, so a developer's mind, maybe it's not the best thing for the user. So we have designers and user experience designers that can point you to the into the right direction. If it's something that doesn't require a user interface change, I think it's fairly easy to have that functionality added. So it depends. That's why we think community is the best place to start the conversation and yeah, and decide what's the best way to do it.
So from your experience so far, what have been your like major takeaways and key learnings for anybody who wants to start building an open source project?
That's a very good question. Well, there have been a lot. I think one of my main things is, or my main learnings is that you need to know how to manage expectations from the people. As an open source developer, you will have a lot of inputs from a lot of places. You need to have a clear vision of what you are trying to do and what's the best way to do it. Because once the gates are open, a lot of, well, depends on. I hope you are have a very successful project, but if you do, you will have a lot of inputs from several sides and telling you different things of maybe opposite directions. So you need to have a clear vision so you can pinpoint to them where you want the project to go, but also manage their expectations because you know not everything is it's possible, not everything is a priority, and yeah, you have to listen everyone, but at the end of the day, it's the project you want to continue and to the same thing. If you want to be sustainable, you have to be, have to be comfortable with the project. So yeah, I think was one of the main takeaways if you want. Oh.